Hello friends. First of all, let me thank all of you for giving a huge response to my webinar on emotional intelligence. This was the webinar where we were talking about how you can grow emotional intelligence and how you can help individuals and your clients to grow emotional intelligence. Subsequent to this webinar, in fact, I have received a great response from around 200 people and around a number of mails, I'll say that, asking me to put the webinar details on the digital platform. Generally, I put the details, but as you must have noticed that in my webinar, particularly, I try to give you the content as much as possible so that you can understand what expectations you can have with that particular course which you are going to attend after this webinar. But still, although number of people have joined for the course which is starting on 25th of April, but I decided that to all my viewers and whoever has participated and have shown interest, I would be giving them detailed analysis of basic topics about emotional intelligence so that you can grow your emotional intelligence and understand the foundations before you take up the step to grow your emotional intelligence. So, as already discussed in the webinar, and it is proved that emotional intelligence is a prime and requisite for a person's development in career, in relationship, or any of the fields, because researchers have proved that people with average IQ but having high EQ, emotional quotient, are more successful than people having very high EQ but no EQ. So, emotional intelligence is a need of today. Certainly, we are seeing a lot of disruptions in society. We are going through phases where a lot of difficult emotions we have to face, and therefore it is very essential that we are able to judge our emotions and reason them out to give ourselves and others, whoever we want to help, to understand their emotions and don't get carried away with those emotions and suffer for that. So today, in my first video after this webinar on emotional intelligence, I am going to take one by one the topics of foundations of emotional intelligence which you should understand. So first topic which I would like to discuss, that is biological and psychological foundations of emotional state. We are all aware that our brain is the most powerful tool. It has the capacity, it has the efficiency to protect us and understand our all the neuro movements, and therefore it has helped us by creating such signals which helped us in difficult situations. Maybe sometimes it acts on our fake behavior also, but it responds according to how we perceive the things. Therefore, it is essential that we understand that brain has given us so many power that we can get over the difficult situations. You must have noticed in the situation of fear, or in situation of fights, or there is a fight to flight. There is a saying that in fight to flight, there is always a fear and anxiety involved. So basically, at that very time, you must have noticed that when you have a fight, even at your traffic or with any of your associate or any matter, you generally have the fight, and then you should notice that considering your maneuvers and the movements, the brain sends the appropriate signal to protect you. Have you noticed once you are in the mood of fighting or you are going for a flight, or the anxious moments are there, and for that purpose it gives you a signal in the form of your heart rate is increased, your blood pressure is elevated, you start getting more oxygen in your brain so that you can very well activate yourself for the particular anxious moment. And considering that aspect, once you realize, yeah, this is the emotion I am facing, so it is very essential that at that very time we understand what we are going through and we come out of those emotions. That is of course the system which we are going to learn in this particular growth of emotional intelligence course. So biologically the brain gives us the signals, and we understand that we have to feel it, but we have to reason it out also. There are other under systems, under indicators which give the indications, like you don't feel hungry, your appetite gets less, your altered immune system responds. Then you have your reproductive systems, of course, which is why a person will be needing those things once you are busy in saving your life. So suddenly the reproductive systems get suppressed. Then you will have heartburn, you may have nausea, you may have lot of other indicators. So considering that, we just understanding these symptoms, we control our emotion and get out of it. At that very time, what happens, that brain releases hormones, that is adrenaline or cortisol, are released to save our lives. These hormones help us and to face that stress level or threat to your emotional level. And once they make yourself normalized, then it subsides. So our stress is constant, but if it prolongs for a long time, it really gives you lot of problem. The stress, if you are not able to resist the stress and take necessary action, you are going to suffer a lot, because stress, if it continues, it will break you down physically as well as mentally. So once you are continuing with the stress, you will find that whole day you have, as if that you have exercised whole day, you will feel so tired, you will feel so broken up. And therefore it is very essential that stress should be tackled at the very appropriate moment. We had discussed about stress in the last webinar, but certainly we are going to have a very important webinar by end of this month on happiness and stress. So we can discuss in detail in that also about stress. Here we are talking about the biological and psychological foundations of our emotional state. So here you have to understand that how our brain works. The brain has two systems, two parts. One is limbic system, which is a critical part for our emotions, and amygdala is a part of our limbic systems, which is responsible for emotions, survival instincts and memory. Amygdala is also responsible for feeling of anxiety, fear, anger. So limbic system is the center where the emotions are generated, whereas The other part, which is said to be PFC, prefrontal cortex, is a very important part because it helps us to reason out and critically think about the situation part. So, to make us emotional resilience, what is the system which our brain follows, or we have to make efforts to follow them? Now, as I have told you that it is very essential to become emotional resilient, to avoid and control your different negative emotions. Whoever has the strongest emotional resilience, they have a perfect connection of your limbic system, that is amygdala, and your prefrontal cortex. And that particular connection gives the resilience to the brain. Basically, what happens that when the event generates emotions, of course, considering the fight to flight as example, you get all those systems from brain, and the as I'm not going to repeat it again, like heart rate and heartburn and nausea and other things. And so basically what happens that once you start getting these systems, the prefrontal cortex take note of these symptoms, and it sends a message to amygdala to quiet down. Gradually it makes it just subside, and amygdala and prefrontal cortex system that helps to maintain that balance. Now, you must be wondering that, okay, if the connection of amygdala and means limbic system and prefrontal cortex is very strong, we can be emotional resilient. But where the connection is not strong, how we are going to discuss, how we are going to work out this resilience power and control our emotions which are harming us, which is correct, because certainly if the connections are weaker, it gives a problem to a personality, and certainly it creates difficulty in managing emotions. But the good news is this, that this particular connection can be developed and can be maintained, because brain has a muscle and it can be very well practiced, and by practicing we can very well do the needful. So now here we understand this thing very clearly, that brain has two parts, limbic system and prefrontal cortex, which are responsible for emotions generation and creating a balance between the rationality and emotional state, and PFC takes the control and maintains that balancing agent work and make the person emotionally resilient. So now we will be talking about that, okay, now we have got this connection aspect. Now how this connection aspect can be strengthened, because this is the major question which we all have to learn and grow. So basically emotional resilience can be developed, and how it has to be developed, that is the psychological foundation. Because in psychology, you must have heard the name of CBT, that is a cognitive behavior therapy. So basically, I have a course of cognitive behavior techniques for life coaching, where we learn how to understand our thoughts, how we perceive the event, and with the result, how the emotions are generated. And once the emotions are generated, then how the actions take place. So how to control the thoughts, it is the CBT techniques. So we would like you to develop mindfulness. So you should become an observer of your thoughts. you should always try and practice to become an observer to your thoughts and not a judgmental observer. Because if you start judging your thoughts, then you will be a worried man. You should see your thoughts objectively so that you can very well decide whether you have to take action for these thoughts or you have to be indifferent to these thoughts. So once you are objectively seeing your thoughts, you can be indifferent to thoughts which you are aware that they are going to harm you. But the thoughts which will be benefiting you, you can very well take them forward. Brain always exaggerate. This is not the correct fact, but it mostly exaggerates, because once the emotions start building, certainly you have to control it so that you can get a very clear and objective picture. So once you start doing this particular mindfulness towards your thoughts, you are going to activate your prefrontal cortex, which you must be remembering that prefrontal cortex is the part which reason out and help us to critically understand the thing. So therefore, when you are not judging the thoughts, you are able to understand your thoughts, how I am reacting to this particular event, or something has broken, so why I am reacting like that. So all these aspects, if you are judging them on objectively observing, then your prefrontal cortex gets activated. And because you are not giving impetus to your emotional growth at that very time, you are trying to observe it being indifferently. So suddenly prefrontal cortex gets activated, and at that very time the power of reasoning out the emotional state and critically understanding them also increases. So if we adopt mindfulness, we start observing our thought process, then we can very well control the resultant emotions and subsequently the resultant actions or behavior which is coming out of those emotions. It is also said that people with positive emotional set points, because when you start controlling your thoughts and you have a habit of putting things on positive perspective, certainly as much as positive set points, emotional set points you develop, your PFC will be far more active than the other part. So therefore, it is very essential that we should always stick to positive emotional set point. Whereas when you are in positive state, your nucleus accumbens, which is also a very important part, which is associated with pleasure, sense of reward and motivation, also get activated. So nucleus accumbens, which is very important for your happiness, gets activated if you have an emotional positive set point. So in the people who have lower neuro connections, like between limbic systems and prefrontal cortex, they have these two aspects. That is, their PFC is not activated properly and their nucleus accumbens has also not been activated so nicely. So therefore, it is very essential that we concentrate on these aspects and we start learning these mindfulness techniques to observe our thoughts and control our emotions. So for increasing or growing or making these connections strong, we need to do the planning. So planning how we are going to do it, certainly it requires a lot of imagination, visualization, and certainly we have to tell the brain that what exactly we are going to develop for the future. So practicing self-control and self-restraint can be a very important catalyst for this process of making this connection between limbic system, amygdala, and prefrontal cortex stronger. So by doing all these things like self-control, self-restraint, planning, imagination, visualization, sending a signal to prefrontal about your these planning and process, you are going to develop your emotional muscles that will help you for long term. But this is not only one day. That today I am talking to you that yeah, observe your thought, observe your emotions, and change. Don't think like that. Of course, everyone says, even from childhood we had been hearing from our parents कि don't think like that, ऐसे मत सोचो, ऐसे मत करो, ऐसे नहीं behave करते हैं, ये इस चीज पे ऐसे behave करते हैं, to give you a different belief to things. But certainly you have to develop these things with practice and with very scientifically proved systems and tools. And therefore, we have launched this exhaustive program of emotional intelligence life coaching certification. Of course, the batch is starting on 25th, but I would request you that if you are willing to join, you can contact my team, and we look forward to talk to you, make you understand, and help you to grow your emotional intelligence. So today it was the first topic of emotional intelligence foundation, that is biological and psychological, which involved the brain parts, which involved the psychological CBT part, and how to control thoughts and how to control and connections of brain to develop emotional resilience. So I hope you must have enjoyed this particular topic, and I'll be seeing you the next topic very soon. I think every alternate days I may be giving you energy to your brain to understand new topics on emotional intelligence. So hoping to see you in next video. Thank you.